Who stood out? Who did well in the second scrimmage of spring practice for the Tennessee football team? We'll break it all down. Talk a whole lot of football here today on Locked On Vols.
You are Locked On Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome into it. This is Locked On Vols. It is your daily Tennessee Volunteers podcast each and every day. It is a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Thanks so much for making Locked On Vols your first listen, wherever you find your podcast, and of course, subscribing and watching on the Locked On Vols YouTube channel. A whole lot to get into today. We're going to recap everything that I heard and everything that Josh Heupel kind of said following scrimmage number 2 of spring football practice. That's coming up here in segment 1. A guy that's continuing to have his name, being mentioned by coaches, by players, is local talent running back DaSean Bishop. Who is DaSean Bishop? And what do we forecast his role being for this team? A little bit more on the local talent tailback from Corinth High School, DaSean Bishop, in segment number 2. And then in segment number 3, Mel Kiper had some interesting comments on Hendon Hooker. Just so desperate to disagree with Todd McShay. And so we're going to bring those comments and discuss that a little bit here in segment number 3 on Mel Kiper on Hendon Hooker. So that's your Friday show, and let's buckle up and get down into it. Tennessee took part in scrimmage number 2 of fall camp Thursday morning. That was inside Neyland Stadium, and it was the offense that won, it was the defense that won scrimmage number 1, and that's kind of predictable, right? Got some guys missing on the offensive line. Defense usually ahead of the offense at this point in time. And so we're wondering about the bounce back from that offense. And I think it's safe to say that the offense bounced back in a big way. First comments coming out of Josh Heupel's mouth when he said, when the question was asked, hey, what are your thoughts on Tennessee's scrimmage overall today? He said, I thought the running backs as a group did some really positive things. Sampson made some people miss. Did a great job pressing double teams. Cam Selton did a really nice job running the football. Good job taking care of it. DaSean Bishop. There were a lot of really good things from the running back group in particular. So the first thing out of his mouth was running backs, and that leads you to believe that the offense had a pretty decent day. In conversating with some people and talking with some people and doing some digging, and of course you guys might have even seen it, the play I'm about to talk about on the Vol Football Instagram story from Thursday. Sampson had a long touchdown run. It was about 60 yards. Sampson is having a really, really nice spring for Tennessee, and it's good to see. You also might have saw in that same story on Instagram, DeSean Bishop found the end zone. So he was mentioned by Josh Heupel as a guy that stood out. He scored a touchdown. It looked like a short one, but somebody told me that he had a really, really good day. More on DeSean Bishop coming up in segment number 2. Nico Iamaleava said to have had a long completion down the field of about 50 yards or more. And you continue to hear some good things about Nico progressing and getting better as spring practice goes on. I was told that Jacob Warren had a really solid day. The tight ends were very, very active in the passing game in scrimmage number 1. At least for Jacob Warren, I think that held up in scrimmage number 2. And there's a lot of injuries, and we'll get to injuries here in a moment, but there's a lot of injuries, especially at the wide receiver position. So for a veteran like Joe Milton, you would think that he's going to go to a veteran like Jacob Warren a lot in these spring scrimmages, and I think that held up. I was told that Jacob Warren, quote, had at least 5 catches today, and that he caught everything that was thrown to him. So, hey, that was good to see. Again, no turnovers from the quarterbacks today, no interceptions thrown. I was told that Nico did fumble, but he recovered his own fumble, and so of course that's not a turnover. And again, even if it was, now's the time to do it here in spring, get some growing pains a little bit. Defensively, it was characterized to me as it wasn't a horrible day, but again, there was a lot of newbies out there, and they were mixing and matching some groups and all that. You had Keenan Peely and Aaron Beasley who didn't play in this scrimmage, right? They've not really been active at practice this week, and it's nothing to worry about in terms of just, being overly cautious. But, they didn't play in this scrimmage, and so that meant you had some young guys who were, starting linebacking, with the number one team going up against the first team offense, Elijah Herring and Caleb Perry, and then some of those freshmen. So I heard a lot of the struggles for the defense was more kind of missed tackles a little bit. And Josh Heupel actually, mentioned that here. I'll find the quote here in terms of the defensive performance in comparison to the scrimmage on Saturday. He said, quote, "I didn't think the tackling in the open field was as good or as consistent as it was the other day. Gave up a couple of big runs. You got to have gap integrity. You've got to run and tackle well. There were times it was really efficient, really good on the defensive side of the ball. There were a couple of big plays that we gave up that you just can't do." And so I think that might have been some of the struggles on defense here on Thursday. And again, that's normal. That's part of growing. That's part of evolving as a football player, especially early on. So I mentioned there was a lot of guys who didn't play in this scrimmage. Keenan Peely was not playing. Caleb Beasley was not playing. Jalen Wright didn't play. Cooper Mays didn't play. Although, again, he's been out for like the last week. But, if this was a game, he could go. Ollie Lane did not play. He's going for that left guard spot, and I think he got dinged up at Monday's practice. Romel Keaton didn't play. I think he got dinged up a little bit in the first scrimmage, and so they're being cautious with him. Squirrel White didn't play. He was in shells on Monday's practice when everybody else was in full pads. And then on Wednesday, everybody was in shells, and he was again in shells, and he was out there running routes and getting stuff done, but he was in a red non-contact jersey. So it looks like Squirrel White got dinged up a little bit, maybe in that first scrimmage as well. Dante Thornton didn't play. Didn't do a whole lot with him. He's been doing some at practice, but again, he's continuing to have a hamstring deal, and so they're being very, very cautious with him. So those are a lot of big names who didn't play in this scrimmage. So obviously, you look at the wide receivers, right? Okay, Brew McCoy's out this spring. He had offseason surgery. Romel Keaton didn't play today. Squirrel White didn't play today. Dante Thornton was very, very, very limited today. Who are you throwing the football to? I mean, gosh, who is your second-string wide receivers? You've got Chaz Nimrod up there. You got Caleb Webb up there. You've got you've got a bunch of young guys and some walk-ons and some guys who are taking advantage of these opportunities. Jack Jancic is even, spring game MVP a couple years ago. He's even out with an injury right now. So there's a lot of raw young players who are playing at the wide receiver position right now because you're a little thin numbers-wise right now at that spot. So, and that's okay. Again, the great thing about spring is it creates opportunities for so many others. But wide receiver, and that's why I don't think the passing game has really taken off this spring. Not that it's been bad, but that's why I don't think that it's really kind of taken off this spring because you have so many guys who are not suited up and going for you. I think this offense is a little completely different with Brew McCoy on one side, Romel Keaton on one side, Dante Thornton in the slot, or Squirrel White in the slot, or Thornton on the outside. That big four, if you will. And with Joe Milton throwing the football, I think it'll look, a whole lot different. But overall, I think this was a good step for the offense in scrimmage number 2. The question was asked, well, hey, if the running backs had such a good day, that must mean the offensive line had a good day, right? And Josh Heupel wasn't so quick to go there. He said, well, watching the video will tell the true story. I did think in general they did a good job on the first and second level. They created some space. All those pieces play off one another. The offensive line taking on double teams, good in their identifications. I thought the tight ends did a really good job. Some of the second level things they were asked to do, and the running backs ran hard. They all ran with good pad level. So, again, the offensive line's kind of in flux right now. Remember, you're trying to replace 2 starters. You've got a brand new transfer portal tackle at left tackle. You've got Gerald Minty, J.J. Crawford, and Dane Davis trying to go for that starting right tackle spot. You got Javonte Spraggins at right guard, who's a veteran. But you don't have Cooper Mays at center right now. And Ollie Lane, who's been going with the ones and competing with Andre Keurig and some of those other guys for that left guard spot, has been out for the last couple of days this week. So, again, like wide receiver, it's mix and matching the talent on the offensive line right now. But overall, it looks like it's done a pretty good job, at least in the second scrimmage. So we'll come back. We'll have more on scrimmage from the second scrimmage for Tennessee on a Thursday. Plus, who's DaSean Bishop? It's a name that we continue to hear more and more about at Tennessee spring football practice. That and more coming up here on Locked On Vols in segment number 2. But hey, I want to tell you guys about FanDuel Sportsbook. The NBA playoffs, they're almost here right now. Major League Baseball is here. You can swing away over at FanDuel Sportsbook. But also for everything NBA related, it's America's #1 sportsbook because new customers can do no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, it's secure, it's super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from the money line to point scores, even three-pointers drained. You can bet on the spread, the money line, the total over or under a set point total. Individual player props such as points, rebounds, assists. You can even mix and match to make your game day parlay even that much more fun. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payouts with same game parlay. So don't miss your chance to get your no sweat first bet up to $1,000 and bonus bets back when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That is FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, guys, welcome back into it. Segment number 2 of a Friday show. I'm your host, Eric Kane, and we're talking Tennessee Spring Scrimmage number 2. So here's the layout. Scrimmage number 1 of spring was this past Saturday. Scrimmage 2 was yesterday on Thursday. Tennessee's going to get the weekend off for the extended holiday. For Easter holiday, the team will return back Sunday night, have a team meeting, and they'll get back to work to finish out the last week of spring practice. This comes up next week, and then, of course, the Orange and White game is that Saturday. It'll be a week from tomorrow on April 15th. And so, it's been kind of fast and furious. It's almost done with spring football practice, but they've gotten a whole lot done. And a name that we continue to hear, whether it's from coaches, or player or people around the program who were at practice the entire time, or who are seeing the scrimmages from every single snap, or if it's from coaches when they meet with the media, or if it's from players when they meet with the media. A name that continues to be brought up, really day after day, is DaSean Bishop. And I'm not going to sit here and try to blow smoke and say DaSean Bishop's going to be a big star for Tennessee this year. I'm not trying to do that. But it's been really impressive what he's done here in spring practice. He was a late add to Tennessee's 2023 signing class. His recruitment was pretty weird. He was always right here in Knoxville, attending local Carnes High School nearby. A fantastic high school player. I'll get into more of that here in a moment. But he was a commit one time to Coastal Carolina. Of course, there was a coaching change there. He decommits. Purdue was very much involved. Michigan State a little bit was involved. But it was always, Tennessee was always involved, being kind of right here. And he made return trips over to campus, throughout his entire recruiting process. But he was a late add to that signing class right there on National Signing Day. And he's come in. And I think for Tennessee, they just wanted to see who he was. What can you bring to the table here in spring practice? Knowing that Jabari Small was going to be out for the entire spring. Knowing that Jalen Wright was going to be limited a little bit, which he has been. Knowing that it was going to be a whole lot of Dylan Sampson, going to be a whole lot of Cameron Seldon, and going to be a whole lot of himself, DaSean Bishop. And I think DaSean Bishop's come in and he's done exactly what Tennessee wanted to see from him. And that's say, hey, I'm good enough to play at this level. I'm tough enough to play at this level. I can grasp the offense and I can be efficient. And he's done a really, really nice job so far. I mentioned I believe he had a pretty good day on the first scrimmage on Saturday and scrimmage 2 on Thursday. He came out and he had that touchdown that we saw on the Instagram story, of course. But again, somebody told me that, hey, DaSean Bishop had a really good day. He's had a really, really good spring. And so that's really, really good to hear. But again, who kind of is DaSean Bishop? Well, he was considered the number 45 running back in the country by On3, ranked number 82 at his position by some other outlets in the industry generated rankings. But in high school, in 4 years at Carnes High School, racked up 8,347 rushing yards, 102 rushing touchdowns over the course, again, of 4 years. He ranked second and third all-time in Tennessee high school football history, respectively, according to the TSSAA online record book, in rushing yards and 102 rushing touchdowns. So 8,347 rushing yards. That is third all-time in TSSAA history. 102 rushing touchdowns in his career is second all-time in TSSAA history. That is pretty good. Back-to-back Tennessee Titans 5A Mr. Football Award winner, which is what an honor, right? Amari Thomas has won that. Trey Smith won that. There's a lot of greats, high school football players who I believe Todd Kelly Jr. at the time when he was a high school prep athlete won that. It's a really big honor if you're a high school player in the state of Tennessee. So we won that back-to-back times in 5A in Tennessee, which is right under 6A, which is the highest. After compiling more than 6,000 all-purpose yards between his junior and senior seasons. Goodness gracious. In those 2 years, he had over 6,000 all-purpose yards. He amassed 2,413 rushing yards on 317 attempts and 30 touchdowns his senior year. He was in the rivalry showcase. I'm looking at his bio right now at Tennessee, but he was in the rivalry showcase in Knoxville, the East Tennessee versus Knoxville All-Star game. I'm a part of that with Pac-Man Productions and Rivalry Thursday. That was a whole lot of fun. He did play in that game, but his junior year was really impressive. Okay, he exploded as a junior. 441 carries, 3,179 rushing yards, and 34 touchdowns. So as a senior, he rushed for almost 1,000 yards less, but it was on well over 100 less carries. So they took a little bit off him as a senior because they ran the absolute tire off the wagon as a junior. 3,179 rushing yards, 34 touchdowns, finishing just less than 200 yards shy of the state record and second in state history for rushing yards in a season. Again, when we look at all these players who were playing for Tennessee, they were probably really, really good high school athletes. But I think this is kind of unique because, again, this is a guy right here from Knoxville, Tennessee. He collected TSSAA and Tennessee FCA 5A All-State honors as a sophomore. He ran for over 1,800 yards on almost 300 carries, 22 touchdowns. And so, up and down the board, he's been super, super solid throughout his high school career. I remember the first time I met DaSean, I was doing a Rivalry Thursday game, and we were at Campbell County. It was Carnes at Campbell County, and this was DaSean's sophomore season. And I did the interview with him before kickoff. And he was just a young pup, right? And that was kind of my first interaction with him. Then I saw him play that night, and I'm like, oh man, he's ran for. By the way, I think like 4 passes total were thrown in that game. He ran for like 250 yards and 6 touchdowns on like 40 attempts. He played a little quarterback in the direct snap Wildcat situation. That was kind of my opening act to DaSean Bishop, and of course, I've been a big fan of his and watching him, throughout his next 2 years of high school. And, we had Carnes games a lot because of DaSean Bishop. And so got to see him a lot of the time. So, when he was a late add to Tennessee, committed to Tennessee's on National Signing Day in December of 2022. He had 17 other Division I offers, including 3 Power 5 programs. And I think Brad Taylor at Carnes did a really, really nice job with him. So that's a little bit of who DaSean Bishop is. So the question was asked to Josh Heupel after Thursday's scrimmage. We've been hearing the name DaSean Bishop. Are you surprised with the Tennessee freshman right now with his good start to spring practice? Josh Heupel says, no, we thought he was a really good player coming in. I say that. He's handled the transitioning into college football extremely well, but we thought he was extremely athletic, had great vision, pace as a running back coming out of high school. He's done a really good job of handling communication systems and not being too big for him since day one. I'm really proud of what he's done, end quote. Some high praise there from Josh Heupel on DaSean Bishop. So let's go back to kind of how I started this segment. Do I think DaSean Bishop will be a star for Tennessee at running back in 2023? I do not. I mean, Jabari Small is going to get his carries. Jalen Wright has proved that he is the best running back in the room, in my opinion. Dylan Sampson is having a great, great season. And then, you have Cam Seldon, who is one of the highest rated prospects in this class, who, is a bigger bodied option and who is still getting used to this offense and everything. But I think he has a lot that he can add in certain situational packages. That does not mean that DaSean Bishop might not get a carry or two or here and there or whatever. That doesn't mean that he's going to be completely written off. But I think in 2023, as a true freshman, I don't have a whole lot for DaSean Bishop in terms of being a productive player. But that doesn't mean that he can't survive and maybe one day play here for Tennessee. That doesn't mean that you can't take a red shirt and see what you can do later on. But also, Tennessee needs running backs. Remember, I continue to bring this up. In 2021, Tennessee was giving a walk-on running back, Marcus Pierce was his name, I believe, giving him carries against Ole Miss and against Alabama in games that were super, super close because Tennessee just had thin running backs and had some injuries to deal with. You need multiple running backs. You need multiple tight ends. You need multiple quarterbacks. You need multiple at all these positions. And I just think that DaSean Bishop's spring here at Tennessee has been really, really good. It makes Tennessee feel really good about the depth and the quality of depth that you have at the running back position. So good job on DaSean Bishop. He has come in here and he is, arguably he might be one of the most impressive guys Tennessee's had this spring. And typically that always goes to a younger guy because it's a guy like DaSean Bishop who you've never heard of, who has stepped up and done a lot of big things that might be on the radar going into fall camp. So that's a little bit of who DaSean Bishop is. Local talent from Carnes High School is having a really, really good spring practice for Tennessee, and good for him, man. That's awesome. We'll see if it keeps up. Can't wait to see what he does in the orange and white game. Hey, let's conclude this show. Let's get back towards the NFL draft process. Hendon Hooker continuing to shoot up boards. In fact, he was mocked as a first-rounder by Todd McShay earlier this week. What about Mel Kiper Jr.? What does he have to say about Tennessee's quarterbacks? We'll discuss that coming up next right here on Locked On Vols. All right, guys, let's conclude this Friday edition of Locked On Vols, talking a little Hendon Hooker and Mel Kiper Jr. I'm Eric Kane, your host here at Locked On Vols. You can always find me on Twitter @_Kaner and @LockedOnVols. As always, thanks so much for making it your first listen and subscribing to the Locked On Vols YouTube channel. So Todd McShay earlier this week mocked Hendon Hooker, 23rd to the Minnesota Vikings as a first-round pick. Todd McShay likes Hendon Hooker. He likes Hendon Hooker a whole lot more, and he's sliding on Will Levis a little bit. Of course, C.J. Stroud's kind of the not unanimous, but pretty much every mock you see is C.J. Stroud going number 1 overall now because I think he has the less of any red flags, right? Maybe the most well-rounded quarterback that you feel safe about taking number 1 overall. Bryce Young is up there at number 2. Of course, he's got the small in stature, concerns. But hey, look at Kyler Murray. He just got paid, right? Anthony Richardson has shot up. A lot of people believe he could be worthy of a number 1 overall pick based on pure potential. Same with Will Levis, but he's slid a little bit. And then you have Hendon Hooker, who's really, really interesting because, Hendon Hooker is hurt right now. And he's not going through all this physical draft process, stuff like that. Of course, Will Levis didn't do the Senior Bowl. Bryce Young didn't do the Senior Bowl. Anthony Richardson didn't do the Senior Bowl. Levis and Richardson couldn't do the Senior Bowl, but nor could Bryce Young, nor could C.J. Stroud. Okay, so that's why they didn't do the Senior Bowl. I kind of had to walk myself through that, right? Underclassmen. But Hendon Hooker was there and did all that, of course, but he couldn't because he tore his ACL in South Carolina. But he hasn't been doing the physical ringer like the other ones. But he's still been sitting in on meetings and still been talking with NFL GMs and scouts and coaches and all that type of stuff. So Todd McShay really, really, really likes him some Hendon Hooker. What about Mel Kiper Jr.? He was talking with On3 Sports the other day, and this is what he had to say about why he's not high on Hendon Hooker. Quote, I think when you look at the quarterback-friendly offense at Tennessee, well, this is off to a good start. And what I mean by quarterback-friendly, he had excellent wide receivers. That's true. He took the snap and shotgun and immediately hop-stepped and threw the football. That is absolutely not true, that last part. Immediately hop-stepped and threw the football? No, he did not. Like, what film are you watching, Mel Kiper? I mean, again, you are an incredibly smart guy and good at what you do. That is a bald-faced lie. That is grasping for straws right there. Immediately hop-stepped and threw the football? Get real. That's almost insulting right there. I mean, literally watch the tape. I mean, I went back and watched every single snap of every single football game the day after they played last year, and I've gone back and watched some of it since. I'm not an NFL draft analyst. I like to think I'm good at my job. Golly. He goes on to say, got it right out of his hands in a fast fashion to 3 outstanding wide receivers. Again, that is just not true. Some plays, sure, but overall, this isn't a West Coast offense. He goes on to say, they had a good running game, true. A veteran offensive line, true. He didn't roll out on the throw. He didn't roll out and throw on the move. For the most part, he did not. That's true. He didn't have to go to the third or fourth option. A lot of the times he didn't, but he's shown the ability to do that. That's one of the biggest knocks on it. And Hendon Hooker kind of said at the NFL Combine. I'm reading this quote and kind of giving my analysis while we go at it. I hope you guys have noticed that and hope you don't mind. Hooker even said at the NFL Combine, he's like, hell, I can't help it if my first option's open. I can't help it if my second option's open. I'm going to throw it to him because I want to go and score points and win football games. I mean, and sure, some of that is scheme, but also, we're going back to the Jalin Hyatt conversation, you have to win one-on-one matchups to be that open. And Jalin Hyatt won one-on-one matchups. And Hendon Hooker made the throw, and Tennessee scored the touchdown. The whole quarterback-friendly system, I don't completely disagree with it. But like anyone that's just wanting to just take everything to the bank and say, that guy sucks, it's all system. Ridiculous. Will Rogers, who I literally couldn't remember his name a couple of days ago, and nobody helped me out in the comment section. Thanks, guys. Will Rogers, big fan of what he's been doing at Mississippi State the last decade and a half. I joke. I feel like he's been there forever, but I am a fan of Will Rogers. Everybody wants to say, oh, it's just system for Leach. The late, great Mike Leach. Dude's got talent. But anyway, for Tennessee, there's a lot of the times he didn't have to work through his third or fourth progression. But there are times where he did, and you can see it in the Florida game. You can see it at times in the Alabama game. Not a lot in the Alabama game, because a lot of times Jalin Hyatt just owned that game, and that was his first read. You can see it in the Pittsburgh game. I mean, go back. I can think of many, many times where he sat there, look, scan, then threw to the other side. All right, we go on. When he was pressed some, his accuracy diminished a bit. I remember Georgia. Okay, I'll give you that. Off the ACL, he's 25 years of age. He'll be 26 in January. The age thing is just the biggest non-factor in my mind. And we see it every single year, guys. Not just with Hendon Hooker this year, but Hendon Hooker is an older guy in order to be considered a first-round quarterback. NFL wants him as young as they possibly can. That's why Darnell Wright is so attractive on top of his physical attributes, on top of his play, but he's played 4 years of SEC football, making 40-plus starts, and he's not even 22 yet. That's why he's so attractable. Hendon Hooker is older than pretty much everybody. That's fine. I mean, I understand that. But again, not everybody's Tom Brady. You're not playing till you're 45. You get 10 pretty solid years in. You can be a really good quarterback from 26 or 27 on to your 35. And that's worthy of a first-round pick, especially if you have postseason success and you go and win the whole thing. I don't know. He goes on to say, he also argued that Joe Milton's strong game against Clemson in the Orange Bowl essentially proves his point. He says, what bothers me, Joe Milton came in when Hooker was hurt, and in the bowl game against Clemson, without Cedric Tillman, without Jalin Hyatt, two top receivers, he lit up the Clemson Tigers. So that Josh Heupel quarterback-friendly offense made it possible for these numbers to be through the roof. His touchdown-interception ratio of 69% and 69% completion percentage with a ton of yards. I like Hendon Hooker as a second-round pick, not a first-round pick. But it looks like based on what you're hearing, he could possibly go in round one, late in round one. So that Clemson game, the Orange Bowl, sure, Cedric Tillman didn't play. Jalin Hyatt didn't play. And sure, Joe Milton played well. He did. He had 251 passing yards. He had 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. The only one of his touchdowns was airing it out, winning a one-on-one matchup down the sideline, and that was Mel Kiper. I believe it was like 45 yards or whatever. His other 2 were on skinny posts or slants, into the end zone where he made a strong blank throw. He really did. Nothing about the Clemson game in terms of the passing game reminded me about the Alabama game or about the Florida game at times or about the Kentucky games at times or about the LSU games at times. I think it was a little bit different because it was a different guy throwing the football. So I disagree with a lot of this. And I mean, Mel Kiper, he brings up some solid points. I'm not arguing. Hendon Hooker did not throw on the run and off lie. He did not roll out. He did not bootleg out a lot of those NFL concepts. I understand that. At times, he did not go to his third or fourth option because so many of the times you had a Biletnikoff award-winning wide receiver that was winning his one-on-one matchup. Especially, hey, if it's a linebacker out there covering him in the slot. I mean, who are you going to take? An outside linebacker or Jalin Hyatt? He's going to run right by him, throwing the football. You go score. Oh, my goodness, Kentucky. Oh, my goodness. Even Alabama did that to Jalin Hyatt. Like, what are you doing? So there are some good points in here. I'm not discrediting everything. But a lot of it, again, the hop, step, and through. Immediately gets the ball in his hands and gets it out. That is incorrect. Do your job, Mel Kiper. You're good at what you do. Don't be lazy. Go watch the tape. He hasn't been high on Hendon Hooker as a first rounder the entire draft process. So maybe he hasn't devoted enough time to Hendon Hooker as where he's been doing it with Richardson and Levis and Stroud and young, and that may be fair. But if we're going to talk Hendon Hooker, let's at least be accurate about it. So those are my thoughts on what Mel Kiper has been talking about with Hendon Hooker. Do I think Hendon Hooker will go to the NFL and be an all-pro and lead multiple Super Bowls? I don't know. We'll see. Probably not, because not many guys are like that, right? Not many guys are Hall of Fame quarterbacks. Does it mean he can go on some deep playoff runs and go win a Super Bowl? Maybe. He's smart. He's got the attributes, and I think he's got the leadership and charisma. So we will see. He's not going to be injured forever. That's what Matt Hayes Saturday Down South wrote. I couldn't agree more. He's not going to be injured forever, folks. So those are kind of my thoughts on what Mel Kiper said. It's been a good week. Been a really good week of the show here on Locked On Vols. Appreciate you guys for tuning in as always. We'll come back on Monday after the Easter holiday, and we'll get you set for the final week of spring practice. What have we learned so far from spring practice here for Josh Heupel in Knoxville with 1 week to go? We'll lead off the show Monday with that and a whole lot more. Please subscribe to Locked On Vols YouTube channel if you haven't already. That will really, really help me out an awful lot. Stay safe this weekend, guys. Enjoy it. We'll try again on Monday. This is Locked On Vols.